She saw you across the room. She looked at you twice, maybe 3 times. Her eyes kept coming back to you again and again. But she never walked over. She never said a word. And you probably told yourself the usual story. She's just not interested. Or maybe you imagined the whole thing. But here's the truth nobody tells you. Women stare at silent men all the time, and they almost never approach them. Not because they don't want to, because they can't. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this happens, what it means about the kind of man you are, and how to use this quiet power on purpose instead of by accident. Stay with me, because this changes how you see every room you walk into. The stare that never turns into a conversation. Think about the last time you noticed a woman glancing at you from across a coffee shop, a gym, or a party. She wasn't loud about it. She wasn't waving you over. She just looked, then looked away, then looked again. This is one of the most common human behaviors, and almost no one talks about why it happens the way it does. Here's the pattern. Loud men get attention too. The guy who's cracking jokes, talking to everyone, working the room, women notice him. But that attention is different. It's easy. It's cheap. It fades the second he leaves the room. The silent man is a different story. Women don't just notice him, they study him. And studying takes time, which is why the stare lingers. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that explains this better than any modern dating coach ever could. He said that very little is needed to make a happy life, and that it's all within your thinking. A man who has mastered his own thinking doesn't need to prove anything to a room full of strangers. And that quality is rare enough that people can't help but notice it. This is the part most men get wrong. They assume that if a woman is interested, she'll act on it the same way a man would. Walk over, start a conversation, make it obvious. But that's not how attraction works for most women, and it's definitely not how it works when the man in question is silent and self-contained. Here's why. Approaching someone requires reading them first. It requires a signal. Loud men give off constant signals. They're easy to read, easy to approach, easy to predict. A silent man gives off almost nothing. He's calm. His face doesn't reveal what he's thinking. He isn't performing for the room. That mystery isn't just attractive, it's also intimidating. Not in a threatening way, but in the way that anything unknown makes us pause before we act. Women are wired, both by instinct and by social conditioning, to be more cautious about the first move. Add in a man who gives off 0 readable signals, and that hesitation multiplies. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events themselves, but from our judgments about them. A woman looking at a silent man is running 1,000 judgments in her head. Is he confident or just cold? Is he interested or just distant? Without any signal from him, she has no way to resolve that uncertainty. So she stares instead of approaching, hoping the answer will reveal itself. It rarely does. Because the silent man isn't performing an answer. He's just being himself. The Psychology of Scarcity. There's a concept in psychology called scarcity, and it explains a huge part of why silent men get stared at more than they get approached. Scarcity means that the less available something appears to be, the more valuable our brain assumes it is. It's why limited edition products sell out, why rare opportunities feel more exciting than common ones, and why a man who doesn't chase attention becomes more interesting than a man who does. A silent man is scarce in the sense that he doesn't offer himself up easily. He's not performing, not over-explaining, not trying to win anyone over. That scarcity creates curiosity, and curiosity is one of the strongest pulls in human attraction. But scarcity also creates hesitation. If something feels rare and valuable, Most people don't feel entitled to just walk up and take it. They study it first. They circle it. They wait to see if there's an opening. This is exactly why the stare lasts so long, but the approach almost never comes. She's not being cold. She's protecting herself from rejection by a man who seems like he doesn't need her attention in the first place. Seneca wrote that the whole future lies in uncertainty, so we should live now. There's a lesson buried in that for the silent man, too. He isn't waiting for validation from the room, and that's exactly what makes the room want to give it to him. What her brain is actually doing when she stares. Let's get specific about what's happening in her mind during those long, repeated glances. First, she's gathering data. Silent men don't give away much through conversation, so the brain compensates by reading everything else. Posture, stillness, how he holds a room, whether he seems aware of being watched or completely unaffected by it. Second, she's testing a theory. Most women have been burned by men who seemed confident, but turned out to be arrogant, insecure, or performing for an audience. A quiet man triggers a mental test. Is this real self-control, or is he just shy? The stare is often an attempt to resolve that question by watching for more clues. Third, and this is the part people miss, she's waiting to see if he'll notice her back. A brief moment of eye contact, held a second too long, followed by him simply returning to what he was doing, tells her more than a 5-minute conversation would. It tells her he's not desperate for her attention. And that, paradoxically, makes her want to know more. This is attachment theory in action. People with a secure attachment style are drawn to partners who feel stable and unshaken by outside validation. A calm, self-possessed man reads as safe, even if he says almost nothing. Meanwhile, men who chase and perform can accidentally trigger the opposite response, an anxious pull followed by pulling away. Why loud confidence fails where silence succeeds. It's worth addressing the obvious question. Isn't it better to just walk over, be charming, and make the first move yourself? Sometimes, yes. But there's a reason the silent, self-contained man ends up more memorable in the long run. Loud confidence is confidence that needs an audience. The moment the audience disappears, so does the energy. It's a performance, and performances end. Quiet confidence isn't dependent on anyone watching. It's the same whether the room is full or empty. Women pick up on this difference almost immediately, even if they can't explain exactly why. One man's presence is built on approval from the room. The other man's presence would exist even if the room were empty. This is Stoicism in its purest, most practical form. Not indifference, not coldness. Just a man who has built his sense of worth internally. So external approval becomes optional rather than essential. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that other people's opinions of him could not touch what was actually his own judgments, his own choices, his own peace. A man who has internalized that truth doesn't need to prove himself to a stranger across the room. And it's exactly that quality that keeps drawing her eyes back, again and again, even without a single word exchanged. How to use this without becoming cold or distant. Here's the part that matters most, because silence without warmth just becomes isolation. The goal isn't to become unreadable or emotionally shut off. The goal is to stop performing for approval while still remaining present and aware of the people around you. Practically, that looks like this. First, stop over-explaining yourself. When you feel the urge to fill silence with unnecessary words, pause instead. Let the silence sit. Most people are uncomfortable with pauses, which is exactly why a man who's comfortable in them stands out. Second, hold eye contact a beat longer than feels natural. Then look away calmly, without rushing. This single habit does more for how you're perceived than almost anything you could say. Third, stop chasing validation in group settings. Speak when you have something worth saying, and let your silence speak the rest of the time. This isn't about being mysterious for its own sake. It's about not needing the room's approval to feel complete. And fourth, if she's staring and you notice it, don't ignore her, and don't chase her either. A simple, calm acknowledgement, a slight nod, a small smile, then returning to what you were doing, often does more than any opening line ever could. It signals that you noticed her, you're not intimidated, and you're also not desperate. That combination is rare, and rare things get remembered. There's an old truth hiding in every one of these stares you've collected without realizing it. You were never invisible. You were simply unreadable. And unreadable men aren't approached. They're studied, remembered, and quietly hoped for. The Stoic vampire doesn't chase eyes across a room. He doesn't need to. He has already built his worth somewhere no stranger's opinion can reach, inside his own mind, in the quiet discipline that no one else sees. Let them stare. Let them wonder. Your silence was never a wall. It was armor built one calm, unshaken moment at a time, and the right woman won't need you to explain it. She'll simply feel it, the way anyone feels the presence of something rare. Stay quiet. Stay steady. Let them come to their own conclusions. You already know yours.